Hey, it's Andrew T here, and I want to talk about another isekai. It's called No Longer Allowed Another World, or in Japanese, Isekai Shikaku. The only reason I bring that up is because the English name is pretty cool. And because it was so cool, I looked up the rough translation of the Japanese, and it pretty much means disqualified in another world, as in not fit to be in another world. Which perfectly fits as the title of this story. Now, I've been meaning to make a video on this series for a while, it's just hard to talk about it for one reason. You see, the main character has a tendency of not wanting to be alive. And I don't think YouTube likes that idea. So this video was on the back burner for a while, but then I saw the anime coming out next season. There was an official translation of the manga, so I picked up the first 2 volumes and reread them. It turns out I still love this series, so I am just going to bite the bullet and talk about it. Now, before I get to the story, I just want to make one thing clear. This is not going to be your average isekai. This is not going to be a power fantasy or trying to get back to his original world. The MC has only one goal in his mind, to die. The question is, how do you make such a morbid topic interesting? The opening scene of this manga perfectly encapsulates what this manga is going to be all about. The pre-isekai scene is short and to the point. It is June 13 of 1948. It is pouring outside and we see 2 characters walking in the rain. We know their destination. They are heading to the Tamawaga Aqueduct. We see the soaking wet protagonist look at the water and say this. The torrent rages. How befitting of a man-eating stream. He then gets nudged by his partner and it is time for the both of them to go. At the same time, they wrap a string around their hands, binding them together. They get really in the moment that they fail to see what is approaching them. At the last moment, the main character turns around to see a truck. The main character knows what's going to happen, and this is the face he shows. If you connect all the dots, you can see what he planned to do with his partner. The main character doesn't get the ending that he wanted, but he just resigns to whatever he gets. The pre-isekai story ends like this. We see the conclusion of what happened to the truck and a single description of what happened that day. On this day, a certain literary legend and his lover departed this world. What a way to start this story. Pretty morbid, right? But when you think about this situation and see the conclusion of it, there is a little humor in it. Just imagine you have this elaborate plan and then the truck punchline hits you. This story will touch upon some uncomfortable topics, but there is some ways to look at it in not such a depressing way. That is what I love about this story, and I hope I can make you give it a shot. So let's actually get to the isekai now. Now, just a heads up, this story is well aware of what isekais are and plays on it. So the story opens up with our main character lying down in a church with a literal light shining upon him. He then gets up, looks around, and starts assessing the situation. He then calmly reaches this conclusion. This is the world of the afterlife. Pretty standard stuff for an isekai. The only thing that stands out so far is that our main character is a writer. So the way he sees the world might be a little different. And while he is admiring the scenery, someone tells him that this is not the afterlife. There was someone in the room the entire time, an elf named Anyette. Her role is to guide those who arrive at this place, but pay attention to how she acts. She is very calm, her words are clear and precise, and she only really spoke up when the MC pretty much settled down. That isn't saying much for our MC, but trust me, this plays in a bit. Anyway, so Anyette introduces us to this world, and I hope this is how this world is pronounced, Zauberberg. Apparently this world is shrouded in darkness, and the MC's role is to be the light of the world, a hero. Now it's really starting to sound like every other isekai, but how the MC reacts is the charm of the story. After being transported to another world, this is how the main character reacts. A different world. transported. In other words, after my failed double ending, I was flung to this bizarre world. I'm glad you understand. It seems the elf has really selective hearing because the MC just said something a little sus. But I guess the MC doesn't really care because he's stuck in his own world as well. So the elf just starts to give the standard isekai speech to save the world, but suddenly stops. The reason for that? An open bottle of pills is rolling her way. Looking closely at the label, it is a bunch of sleeping medication. And when you follow the trail of pills, you will see our main character with a bloated stomach leaning against some pews. I ain't no rocket scientist, but that only leads to one conclusion. So the elf starts to spam healing spells. This causes the main character to wake up, and this is the thanks the elf gets. You are causing mischief, it would seem. How bothersome. I demand you cease this at once. Just what are you trying to do? For just one moment, we see the elf become an actual character, but then she goes back to her job. Now, with emotion, she starts to tell the main character that he is a hero and has a mission to do. A mission? That is none of my concern. I merely seek a place to die. Pretty dramatic, but kinda gets ruined by him nibbling on pills on the floor. None of this makes sense to the elf. She doesn't understand why someone chosen would do this to themselves. So the MC responds to the elf and slowly gets up. Chosen? And who, pray tell, wished for that? Huh? Did a truck not appear before you? A truck? Ah, I suppose there was one. All it took was hearing the word truck and Anyet instantly becomes relieved. That is a interesting response for sure, but that's because her view on isekais is very skewed. In her world, there is a term for that truck, the isekai jackpot truck. So this world is very accustomed to the concept of isekais. But there's a bit of a skew, just look at this diagram. It starts off with the chosen one being very unhappy with their current life. Then by pure chance, chosen by a truck, they are given the opportunity to start a new life. This overall concept is called the Isekai Transport Service. Did you notice anything very particular? Like how this seems like only a positive experience for the chosen one? Just look, there's a star where the impact of the truck should be, and the person is alive enough to say, I was chosen. Oh, and look at that panel there. It clearly says happy, he's surrounded by girls, and he's very strong. This makes it clear that this is the dream of anyone who gets chosen. So it makes sense why Anyet was so relieved when she confirms that he was indeed transported by that truck. Because in the next panel she says that proves that he was unhappy, but now he gets to start anew in this world. There are a lot of assumptions in that statement. So the MC gets right in her face and says this. Because of that truck, I was unable to savor the double ending that was meant to be the pinnacle of my life's happiness. There are few acts as presumptuous as unilaterally appraising another's happiness. Even after listening to the MC, she still can't believe what she's hearing. She starts thinking that the main character did not see how bad his life sucked to want that ending in the first place. But she moves on. She just believes that once he finds out he has some supernatural gift, he'll change his tune. So she looks at the main character's stats, and yeah. Looks like the system even thinks the main character is doomed to die. It's to the point where even the guide is starting to lose hope. And as you were focusing on Anyet, did you see what the MC was doing that entire time? Even though the main character's life may be at stake, he doesn't care and takes a smoke break. And once he was done with that smoke break, he tries to leave, but is stopped by Anyet. She starts to apologize and now believes that this entire scenario was a mistake. She straight up tells him that you do not belong in this world, and this is how the main character responds. That is the very essence of my life. What? No matter what world I find myself in, I am forever destined to be branded a failure. All the elf can do is apologize and begs him to stay because he'll die if he goes. But the MC tells her it's okay, don't worry. From the very start, he was just looking for a place to die. And that is the hero of our story. He just wants to stop. But this story would be over if that was the case. Which brings us back to the elf and her backstory, which just shows how deep Isekai is in this world. In the past, Annette took pride in her role as a guide. With light in her eyes, she eagerly did her job of greeting new travelers. However, the more she did her job, the emptier she became. You can see the light in her eyes dim as things just got into a routine. And eventually, the joy she once had was gone. Which was why, when she met the MC, it was just another day for her. So like any other hero summoning, she said the exact same lines, expecting the same answers. Which explains why the elf didn't really react to what the MC initially said, only reacting to when the pill bottle hit the floor, cause that is something that never happened before. There is a genuine back and forth because Annette slowly gains back that passion and cares about the main character. And as the MC was about to leave the church, Annette stops him, stating that he should at least pick a profession, and the MC says this. A profession? I am an author by nature, nothing more, nothing less. Farewell, young lady with the beautiful ears. The second the MC leaves those doors, Annette had an epiphany. That this man was exactly what she was waiting for the entire time. And that is the intro to our story. It pretty much follows your typical isekai formula, but the MC just feels out of place. He is a depressed writer who wants to die. So there's nothing really stopping him from doing whatever he wants, no matter the situation. And if you are an enjoyer of isekais, there's going to be some moments where you might raise an eyebrow or two. Now, there is just one more part that I want to talk about, which just captures the magic of this story, because there are times where it gets really dark, but at least there's light at the end. But first, I have to explain how he gets his companions, because he gets in a very in-character way. First, he saves a cat girl in a tree. What catches his attention is her screaming for help. And once he gets there, what he finds is a cat girl in a very precarious situation begging for help. The MC's first response is to admire the novelty of the situation and then appreciate how she's in a very precarious situation. His first words are this. I don't suppose you would permit me to use your likeness in a novel. There is a time and place to ask that kind of question, and one of those places is not while they're hanging in a tree. The MC then tries to help the cat girl, but just remember his stats. He's barely hanging on himself, so of course he gets caught as well. But where are his manners? Well, he's being strangled by that tree. He decides to exchange pleasantries, which includes their expected lifespan. The cat girl then explains the situation. This is a death tree, their life is being sucked out. In a few minutes, they are going to be dead. Which is apparently splendid news to the MC. This is the face he makes when his life force is being sucked out. There's just a little itty bitty issue. His life force isn't the best to be sucking out because it causes the branch around his neck to decay. Remember his stats page? He was poisoned the entire time. There was so much poison in him that he ended up dealing 300 damage to that tree, killing it. The newly liberated cat girl then assumes that this was all according to the MC's plan, which it wasn't. So the MC ends up responding like this. It's the same as ever. Despite my wishing for death, I always end up surviving. That is all there is to it. Up until now, I've made 5 attempts on my life. Not once have I been met with success. And look at that, the cat didn't really think too hard on his answers and starts blushing. So she ends up joining the party and ends up calling the main character Sensei, and I will do the same. Now, for the second companion, obviously it's the elf. He goes back to that church, and she's down bad. If you want to know how bad, you see, Sensei's main mode of travel is in a coffin. So she happily drags it along their journey. So she's lugging around dead weight the entire time. Get it? Anyways, so we get to the part I actually want to talk about. They head to Rock Castle Town and they end up meeting the king. In a very isekai-like manner, after meeting Sensei just once, the king is giving him a critical decision for the town. So the king wants Sensei to decide who the princess will marry because the groom will become the new king. Being presented with two options, Sensei obviously responds with, "I don't know." And the king is shocked, so Sensei has to give it to him straight. The choice he is presenting to people he just met for the first time controls the future of his kingdom as well as his daughter. This of in itself is the actions of a tyrant. So in Sensei's honest opinion, he's just unfit to be king. And after saying all that, he just discredits himself because why should you listen to a failure like himself? This leaves the room bewildered, but something Sensei says catches the prince's attention. Then it becomes night, and Sensei just can't sleep. He ends up leaving the room because his companions are a bit too rowdy, and there he finds the princess just staring into the distance. He starts making small talk with the princess, and they talk about how nice the lake is. One is admiring the view, the other wants to be a part of the lake. The act of taking in the lake is very concerning, so the princess asks what got you in that mindset in the first place. But Sensei turns that around. There must be something wrong with the princess if she's just admiring the view so late at night. So the princess opens up and she just can't decide who to pick, admitting to being lost and not knowing what to do. So Sensei answers like this. The two of us are quite different. You are a kind young lady who cares deeply for her father. My life has been an endless chain of one worry after another. My constant conclusion attempts caused immense trouble for my father and family. But you see, the decision of how to live your life is not something you should entrust to others. The path you ultimately take should be one chosen by you and you alone. Look deep inside and ask yourself, what is it that you truly desire? And then he just leaves like that, leaving the princess just standing there. The next day comes and the princess now must make a choice. And after considering everything, this is the choice she makes. She will join Sensei in a double conclusion. That is something that normally does not happen in isekais. So of course everyone in the room is surprised. Moving on, she then starts to explain that she did a lot of self-reflecting after her talk with Sensei. She then justifies her reason for choosing neither. At this point, openly defying her father and expressing herself, clearly stating that she never wanted to get married in the first place, and the only one who considered her feelings was Sensei. So that's why she chose to forego the marriage and join Sensei in his, ending. Which is pretty much the worst ending. The princess was in a very delicate situation, and Sensei just gave her another option. He just talked about himself and the freedom of choice, and she kind of interpreted that as a way out and wanted to join him. Not even a day has passed, so she never really thought things through. But then the classic isekai trope happens where actually one of the choices was evil. So now there is a fight. But in the middle of it, Sensei does this. He calls out to the bull and politely asks if he could turn and charge his way. The two of them just so happen to be looking for death, and it would be nice to die in one blow. Doing so is a favor for the princess since she has just been freed from her father and wishes to join him in death. Just look at the princess that entire exchange. Does she actually want this? This entire time, Sensei has been speaking on her behalf. So at the end of their exchange, he looks directly at her and says, "Now your wish will come true, Princess Charlotte." And this is the face she makes in response. The bull then charges their way, and the princess has a change of heart. She actually doesn't want to die and wants to help the citizens of this kingdom. That doesn't surprise Sensei at all. It seems like he always knew that she didn't want to join him. Then he just pushes her aside, saying, "But you are no longer suited to my partner in death." He then just stands there waiting for the bull to hit him because the princess is now safe. But like always, Sensei somehow survives because of friendship or whatever. The bull then gets defeated, the king begs for forgiveness, and the kingdom is saved. Which pretty much wraps up as much of the stories I'm going to cover. Now, since this is the end, I want to talk about my overall impressions on this series. To be honest, to this date, I don't think there's another isekai quite like this one. The MC in this story doesn't care that he's in an isekai. Nothing really changed for him. He still sees himself as a failure, when in reality he was nothing like that. He was actually a literary legend, but he doesn't see it that way. Which is kind of sad to see whenever he shows total disregard for his life. But maybe he's right, because he is a failure at... which is kinda funny. At first, I thought this was a tragedy disguised as a comedy. You see the main character suffering, and he can't escape because the world just won't let him. So he just does whatever he wants, and doesn't really care about what the outcome will be. Because his worst outcome is actually the best outcome. Now, if that was all there was, I would not be making this video. The one thing that I can really appreciate is that Sensei never really drags anyone down with him. His personality is pretty self-destructive. He's constantly eating pills, doesn't really take care of himself, and he's practically always dying. But he doesn't really advise others to follow the same path. You might be thinking, oh wait, the princess, but the reason I brought up the princess is because he knew that she never wanted to go through with it. And the fact that she made the choice at the very end to become queen is kinda a really nice ending to that arc. As you go through the story, Sensei is actually a bright spot in a lot of characters' lives, which is kinda ironic because he is his own darkness. I don't want to get too deep on that, just know that I read chapter 47-48 and I kinda really like what happened. Now, since I kinda took too long to make this video, I can quickly talk about the anime. Just watch it if you don't want to read. Pretty good. It's not gonna be everyone's cup of tea, but they show exactly what they need to. The manga is drawn really well, and the anime captures most of it. The one thing that I can say is that the anime adaptation is a lot more brighter, comedic even, because of the delivery. Just watching that elf initially drag that coffin with enthusiasm made me laugh. Which I didn't really ever do when I was reading the manga, so it's a nice change, I guess. Maybe I will end up talking about the first 3 episodes because I'm kind of invested at this point. But I think it's time to end this video, you know? So if you want, pick up the manga. If you can't, watch the anime. If anything, thank you if you made it this far. I really do appreciate it. Please like, comment, or subscribe. Peace. Oh, you're still here. So there's one thing that I have to bring up. I never talked about Sensei's like superpower or whatever. You know how I hyped up the title at the very beginning, No Longer Allowed Another World? Now, this is a spoiler, so if you don't care, just listen. He has the ability to send back people who got isekai to their original life. That's why they are disqualified from another world. And the crazy thing is that they find some kind of peace with being back. I find that brilliant, but I kind of forgot to talk about it in the video. Anyways, that's it. Bye. Peace. Okay, bye.